Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling something that's pretty sneaky, SQL injection attacks. But don't worry, by the end of this, you'll know exactly how they work and how to protect yourselves. We're going to give you all the knowledge you need to really lock down your data. You know how almost every website has that search bar? Well, that's often a hacker's favorite target. It can be like a secret entrance for a tricky technique called SQL injection. That's how attackers can sneak malicious code into the databases behind those websites and potentially steal sensitive information. To help break this down, I've got our cybersecurity expert here with us. What I find really interesting about SQL injection is just how widespread it is. Can you give us an idea of how big of a problem this really is?
Absolutely. You got to think about it. Almost all websites and apps that use data from users rely on SQL databases behind the scenes. And that makes SQL injection a powerful tool for hackers. They basically find weak points in the web application and use those to inject malicious code to take control over the database.
So it's not just about breaking in with brute force. It's about tricking the system from the inside. Can you give us an example of how this works in practice?
Sure. Let's say you're on a website, like an online store, and you're looking for running shoes. A normal SQL query in the background would look something like select from products where product name equals running shoes. Now, what an attacker can do is change that by typing something like running shoes or 1-1. This might not look like much, but it really changes things.
So by adding that little bit of code, they can totally change what the query does.
Exactly. The database reads 1, which is, well, always true, and then it's forced to show all the items from the products table, not just the running shoes. The attacker has basically gotten around the search and now has access to all sorts of data.
That's pretty clever. It makes you realize that even those simple input fields can be dangerous.
Yeah, and the methods they use keep changing and getting more complex. Beyond what we call classic SQL injection, there's sneakier stuff like blind SQL injection. In blind SQL injection, attackers don't directly see the results of their code. They have to create queries that give them indirect answers, like whether something is true or false.
So it's like they're playing a guessing game with a database, trying to piece together information bit by bit.
Exactly, like a digital version of 20 questions. For example, they might use code that causes the website to slow down if a specific database table exists. If there's a delay, they know they're on the right track. There's another type, time-based blind SQL injection, that uses specific time delays, almost like Morse code, to steal information.
Wow, this is getting pretty intense. How do we even know if we're being attacked? Are there any signs we should look out for?
Absolutely, being alert is key. Keep a close eye on error messages, especially if they show SQL syntax errors or words you don't recognize from databases. That's a big warning sign. Also, a sudden increase in failed logins could mean something's up. Someone might be trying to force their way into your system.
So it's all about noticing those small details and taking action. What are some practical steps we can take to stop these attacks from happening in the first place?
The good news is there are ways to protect our data. One really effective method is using prepared statements. Think of it as building a secure connection between your application and the database. With prepared statements, you're separating the user input from the SQL code so attackers can't mess with the query. It's like having a barrier to stop harmful code from getting in.
That makes sense. How can someone actually use these prepared statements?
It involves using specific functions in your programming language that clean up user input before it gets to the database. Basically, you filter out any potentially dangerous characters that could be part of an injection attack.
So you disarm the threat before it even becomes a problem. What else can we do to make our systems even safer?
Well, for more info on how our appliances can help protect your data, you can reach out to us at sales@stonefly.com or check out our website, www.stonefly.com. Another critical step is keeping your software up to date and installing those security patches. New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time, so staying ahead of those is essential.
It's like remembering to lock your doors and windows. Basic, but really important.
Exactly. These might seem simple, but they make a huge difference in reducing the risk of SQL injection attacks. But there's more we can do. There are even more advanced techniques for building a truly secure data environment. Do you want to explore those?
Absolutely. Let's dive deeper into the world of those advanced security best practices.
One of the best things we can do is use continuous monitoring and auditing. It's like having a security camera that's always watching your database, recording everything that happens. Login attempts, queries, configuration changes, everything. This log is super valuable for spotting suspicious activity early on.
So it's not just about having the data, it's about actually analyzing it for those red flags.
Exactly. And we can even set up alerts that tell administrators in real time if there's a potential breach. These alerts are triggered by certain conditions, like if there are too many failed logins from one IP address, or if someone's trying to access sensitive data they shouldn't.
It's like having a security guard who's always on the lookout, ready to raise the alarm if anything seems off. So we've got our prevention in place and our ways to detect problems. What about actually protecting the data itself?
That's where data encryption and masking become really important. Encryption's like putting all your sensitive information in a vault, locking it up tight. It scrambles the data so anyone who doesn't have the key can't read it.
Encryption is pretty common, but data masking sounds interesting. It seems like a really smart way to protect sensitive information.
It is. Data masking is all about creating a sort of illusion. We replace real data with fake data that looks real. We keep the format and structure the same, but hide the actual information. Say you've got a credit card number. We can mask it by changing the real digits with random ones, but they'll still follow the same pattern.
So the application can still work as usual, but the real credit card numbers are never actually exposed? That's clever.
Right. It's like a magician's trick. The data looks like it's there, but the important stuff is actually hidden.
So encryption locks down the data and masking disguises it. That sounds like a powerful combination.
It is. And we can use encryption for data that's stored, like on a hard drive, and for data that's moving around on networks. We've talked a lot about the technical side of security, but we can't forget about the people involved.
You're right. Even with the best security systems, human error can still happen. That's why you mentioned security training for developers earlier. Why is that so crucial?
Well, developers are the ones building the applications that interact with our databases. They need to know how to write secure code right from the start. It's not enough to just rely on security tools. They need to really understand the principles of secure coding and be able to find potential vulnerabilities in their own work.
So it's about more than just following rules. It's about developing a mindset that prioritizes security.
Exactly. And that's what regular security training is for. Developers should be learning about new web application vulnerabilities all the time, like SQL injection, of course, and they should be learning best practices for secure coding. We want them to know how to use security testing and code review properly, too.
It sounds like there's a lot to learn, and it's always changing to keep up with new threats.
Yeah, it has to be. Cybersecurity is a fast-moving field. New threats pop up all the time, and attackers are always finding new ways to get around security measures. Training needs to be ongoing so developers can stay ahead of the curve.
This makes a lot of sense, but it really shows how complex cybersecurity is. It's not just about installing some software and thinking you're done. It requires a multifaceted approach, combining technology with a culture of security.
You got it. It's about creating a security ecosystem where everything works together, from the code itself to the people who write and maintain it. And if anyone's feeling overwhelmed by all this, there's good news. At Stonefly, we're dedicated to providing robust data protection solutions that make security simpler for our clients. If you want to learn more about what we offer, you can visit our website, www.stonefly.com, or email us at sales@stonefly.com. We're here to help you build a secure data environment.
It's good to hear. Sometimes it feels like we're in a constant battle with these attackers, trying to stay one step ahead.
It's true, there's definitely a back and forth. But the more we learn about their methods and the more we focus on being proactive, the better our chances are of protecting ourselves.
This has been a really eye-opening look at SQL injection attacks. I feel like we've not only uncovered how these attacks work, but we've also learned how to defend against them. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we finish up?
With everything we've talked about today, if someone's feeling a little overwhelmed, what's the one thing they should really take away from all this?
Yeah, that's a good point. We've covered a lot. What's the most important message?
I think it's that knowledge is power. The more we understand about the threats out there, the better we can protect ourselves. We've talked about how SQL injection works, how to prevent it using things like prepared statements and input validation, and even those more advanced techniques like data encryption and masking. But really, it comes down to this. Be proactive, be vigilant, and keep learning.
That's great advice for navigating the digital world these days. And the good news is you don't need to be a cybersecurity whiz to make a difference. Even simple things, like having strong, unique passwords for all your accounts and being careful about what you share online, those can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Security is everyone's responsibility. And remember, there's help out there. There are lots of security experts and organizations dedicated to helping people and businesses stay safe online.
Before we wrap up, let's go over some of the key things we've talked about today. What are the most important things to remember about SQL injection?
The first thing is to understand that SQL injection is a real and serious threat. And it's not just a problem for big companies. Anyone who uses the internet could be at risk.
So it's not something we can just ignore, hoping it won't happen to us. We all need to be aware and take steps to protect ourselves. What else should we remember?
Second, it's important to know the warning signs of a SQL injection attack. We talked about strange error messages, lots of failed login attempts, those sorts of red flags. If you notice something that doesn't seem right, don't ignore it. Report it to whoever runs the website or app right away.
So being observant and knowing what to do if something seems off. What's your last piece of advice for our listeners today?
Focus on prevention. We've gone through a bunch of different ways to prevent these attacks, from using prepared statements and input validation to encrypting and masking data. Make security a core part of your development process and how you manage data overall. And like we said earlier, security training for your development team is key.
It all goes back to that security ecosystem you talked about. Every layer of protection adds to the strength of the whole system. This has been a fantastic deep dive into SQL injection attacks. We've learned a lot about how these attacks work and how to defend ourselves. For those of you who want to find out more about how to keep your data safe, our team at Stonefly is here to help. You can check out our website at www.stonefly.com or get in touch with us at sales@stonefly.com. We have a range of data security solutions that can really make a difference. Before we go, I want to leave you with this. Think about all the websites you use every day. Are they doing enough to protect your data from SQL injection? It's a question worth thinking about. Stay safe online, everyone. And remember, knowledge is your best defense.